What is up, guys? It's your boy GRC. We're coming at you live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern, crypto in the morning, with my co-host Sam STOLT and my producer Bullish Ox. And producer Bullish is sick right now. So biceps in the chat for Bullish, because you think he might be in the emergency room. Actually, I don't know the specifics of that, but I just told him to text me if he needed anything. He's been sick. So we want biceps because the good Lord loves biceps in the chat. Me and Sam, guys, it's a weird period in crypto right now. It's like me and Sam can handle this stuff okay, but even me and Sam are a little bit like wow. Like, it's a lot. And I don't mean like information density wise as much as like, oh my God, the social implications of this. I would have never assumed. I would have just never assumed it. Like, oh, GRC, you're going to be doing crypto for a year. Oh, you're going to be talking to a bunch of grown men mad at each other about stuff and like a bunch of rules that don't really exist and like a bunch of inflation numbers that don't really exist. And like, but everything goes up a lot. And we just kind of like, it's like really, it's crazy right now. We're in a transitionary period. It's like, and I love it. This is what I was made for. I love sticking and staying. I love being patient. I love waiting and not doing bad things because I know humans generally get a lot of time on their hands. They start clicking on the wrong things. And if you focus up real good, we're going to bring it back to the basics. Sam sent me a video this morning, the principles for dealing with the changing world order by Ray Dalio. We're going to try to slow it down a little bit back to the basics. You know what I'm saying? I want to see biceps all over the place. I have a tweet out. Me and Sam are looking for, again, me and Sam cover a lot of stuff in our free time, but that does not mean that people like the stuff that we cover in our own time. Like I cover stuff that I would never talk about, frankly. And Sam probably does the same within whatever pockets of nuance that he gets into. But I want to know what you guys want. So I dropped a tweet on Twitter. What do you guys want for the week? What do you guys got your eyes on? What do you want? What white papers do you want Sam to dig into? We love those suggestions because it's hard sometimes to know exactly what everyone else. There's a lot of stuff, guys. Come on, guys. You know how much stuff there is. Crypto in the morning live every single day. 1 minute, 9 seconds. DeFi proof. The greatest rapper in crypto history.
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. GymRatCrypto sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning. 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 Crypto in the morning.
What's good? Good morning. This Ray Dalio video is interesting. If you guys have never heard of Ray Dalio, when I finished my MBA, I actually applied to work at Bridgewater Associates, which is his hedge fund, or was. He's actually retired from them, but he had a hedge fund because that's what I used to want to do. And I respected what he built. He started it in 1975 and built the largest hedge fund in the world.
How did he do it? Like, what was his like claim to fame? I know, like, obviously there's a lot, but like, what's his big thing? Like, is he just really like non-biased and kind of moves through?
Yes.
That's always how those guys end up being. They're just non-biased, man. They just really cannot see social bias.
He's got a Bridgewater Associates like handbook that I read a number of years ago, where he goes through and talks about the creating that unbiased, right? Like, because everybody has the bias. So when you're coming up with a investment thesis for something, right, or you're doing something, seeking an opposing point of view in there is a good way to approach it, and implementing that into structure in a business. Think about how powerful that is. If you can get people to look at things from 2 points of view and get a better solution, like clearly it worked, to be the largest hedge fund in the world. Massive. This guy does a lot of like macro level stuff. I've read one of his books before. I've listened to numerous podcasts from him. He's a very smart man who's put in a lot of work.
Me and Sam can spin something together for LP. Like, we can separately find 2 pairs that we've been driving with and talk about them and why. And those change dramatically, guys. So like in a month, you can't say that the hexahedron pair is going to have super high volume, but it might right now, right? Because it might have more, but it might have less, and it might be we might all be dead. So like that's LP 101, Sam. Like, a lot of Sam's work behind the scenes is to figure out a way, not like, I'm not going to say any other specifics, to make it a little less hands-on. Frankly, we like to work out and go away from the house for hours at a time when we're doing stuff. In 3 hours in crypto, anything can happen. That doesn't mean you're going to lose all your money or anything, but it's like, optionality and functionality for the users is what we like. So I like that topic. I like liquidity providing. I think it's always a hot topic, and I think it's something that, frankly, no one talks about or knows about except a couple smart guys.
I think that'll be interesting to go into, because it is definitely a topic that not a lot of people understand fully, and I think we can bring more education and understanding to how liquidity providing works.
Someone asked me what my job was, and I was literally sitting there, and he asked me what I did for work, and I was like, give me a sec. And he was like, because we didn't know each other. And I was like, because I wanted to say, like, I was like, what do I do for money? Like, I was like, what do I really do for money? And I was like, I taught like 4 guys this month how to put their money into a pool. And I pretty much earned all my money from that. And he's like, what? It's like, yeah. And I was like, they had way more money than me, but they didn't know how to do it. And he was just like, that makes no sense. And I was like, I know. I was like, frankly, it makes no sense to me either. But like, the truth is, it's like teaching people how to park their money is huge. And you can do it with only making the asset number go up between pairs that bound together to a degree. So we could talk LP all day. Let's not go there.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that tomorrow. We can do an LP tomorrow.
27th, we got KG coming on the hold on. What's the day of the
funny story
date right now?
25th, so in 2 days.
2 days. I got to remember that.
Funny story on KG. If you guys are not familiar who KG is, he's behind Internet Money Wallet. There's already a token launched on Binance. So he calls me the other day. I think it was Sunday or Saturday. He calls me, and I've got my headphones on, right? And
he dared call you
because he texted me. He wanted to ask about LP.
Calling Sam is a.
But I didn't know who was calling me because my phone is out on the table. And what I had just done is I had put the door on my laundry room. I just finished remodeling my laundry room, and I painted the door, and then I was putting the hinges on and putting the door in place. So I put the door in place. There was no knob, and I accidentally shut it. So I was locked into my laundry room, had my headphones, no screwdriver, no tools. There's nothing in the cupboards. I had to climb out the window. He calls me. He's like, hey, Sam, what's going on? I was like, hey, KG, what's up, bro? And we're talking. I was like, hey, sorry, dude, I got to go. Like, I'm locked in my laundry room. Nobody's home. I don't have my phone, and there's no tools in here for me to get out. I had to climb out my window to like come back and fucking fix the issue.
That's hilarious. He probably can barely hear you, Crypto. Really? I don't think anyone's had a problem with the hearing, so that might be on your end. Let's go into the video, Sam. We'll play it. Just stop it wherever you want.
It's a good video.
I do that like 3 times a week, by the way, Sam. Like, lock myself into something. Dude, I do that all the time because I'm neurotic about locking doors, and people don't. certain doors. There's certain doors that just I lock behind me, and then that one time you just put your key on the counter or whatever you do, and then someone calls you and you turn around, you slam the door, and you're like, I'm locked in my fucking shed.
Yes.
Or my keys are locked in my car. I can break into any car in 5 seconds. I've locked my keys in my car so many times, and I've learned the hard way.
Bro, one of the and I'm sorry, this is the last tangent before we get into the video. So Tesla, right? So I have the Tesla. It's connected on Bluetooth. You never lock the car and you never unlock the car. It is awesome. You don't have to bring keys with you. You don't have to remember to bring your keys. One of the subtle little things that makes a big difference in the quality of the experience. I don't have to lock the Tesla. I don't have to unlock the Tesla. I don't have to bring a key with me.
Sam, I think I'm ready. Like, I think financially, like, I'm ready to get a vehicle that I can, and I need to talk. I'm not saying about buying the vehicle, but I need to talk to you because it's only going to be Tesla. I have no other options, guys. Come on. It's so good.
Way better.
It's so good. It's so, dude, the phone already, like, that was all I would need. I got a stick shift Honda. I mean, that thing purrs, but it is a sports edition. I do love it, actually, but like, it's no Tesla. Let's go, guys. We're gonna watch this for a little bit. Just sit back, relax, smash the like button, share this out. We're getting serious. This is about education and learning and getting back to the basics, because right now it's a complicated time emotionally for a lot of people. There's a lot of ups and downs. Let's just break it down. We're just going through the same old human experience. It's different technology. Let's move it.
The Changing World Order.
It's a good video.
The times ahead will be radically different from those that we've experienced in our lifetimes, though similar to many times before. How do I know that? Because they always have been. Over my roughly 50 years of global macroeconomic investing, I've learned the hard way that the most important events that surprised me did so because they never happened in my lifetime. These painful surprises led me to study the last 500 years of history for similar situations, where I saw that.
You're telling me this dude was studying stuff that happened before? Why was he doing that?
Because then you get to learn what actually takes place. So think about this. He's going to get into this.
This is great.
There's been many different reserve currencies. The US dollar is the reserve currency right now, right? Probably not for that much longer, but it will be for a little bit of time.
And 2 years or 5 years, if you had to guess?
Probably five. Mm-hmm. But
we'll be so flipping rich by then. It'll be disgusting.
But there's been many other reserve currencies, and he gets into the stories of these where these currencies died and how this cycle goes by studying history. And this is, I found this fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree with him too. I do this in my own time, smaller scale, not as far back, because I'm still learning crypto. Like, I got to get through crypto first. But you know, I'm getting there. You know, I'm in legacy as far as paying attention. Like, I know what's going on now as far as where's the money at. Like, and that's all you have to look for. It's just a little bit of, it's just a little flow chart. Like, where's the money go? How long? And then in what times in the world have things really changed up? This bam, something changed. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going through this right now, guys, frankly. So this is super relevant.
Yes.
They had indeed happened many times before, with the ups and the downs of the Dutch, British, and U.S. empires. And every time they did, it was a sign of the changing world order. This study taught me valuable lessons that I'm going to pass along to you here in a distilled form. You can find the comprehensive version in my book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order.
Beautiful.
Let me begin with a story that brought me to this point, about how I learned to anticipate the future by studying the past. In 1971, when I was a young clerk on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, the United States ran out of money and defaulted on its debts. That's right, the U.S. ran out of money. How? Well, back then, gold was the money used in transactions between countries. Paper money, like the dollar, was like checks in a checkbook in that it had no value other than it could be exchanged for gold, which was the real money. At the time, the United States was spending a lot more money than it was earning by writing a lot more of these paper money checks than it had gold in the bank to exchange for them. As people turned these checks into the bank for gold money, the amount of gold in the U.S. started to dwindle. It soon became obvious that the U.S. couldn't keep its promises for all the existing paper money, so people holding dollars rushed to exchange them before the gold ran out. Recognizing that the U.S. was going to run out of real money, on Sunday evening, August 15th, President Nixon went on television to tell the world that the U.S. was breaking its promise to let people exchange their dollars for gold. Of course, he didn't say it that way. He said it more diplomatically, without making it clear that the United States was defaulting.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
I watched in awe, realizing that money as we understood it was ending. What a crisis. I expected the stock market to plunge the next day, so I got on the exchange floor early to prepare. When the opening bell rang, pandemonium broke out, but not the kind I expected. The market was up, way up, and went on to rise nearly 25%. That surprised me because I never experienced a currency devaluation before. When I dug into history, I discovered that the exact same thing happened in 1933 and had the exact same effect. Then paper dollars were also linked to gold, which the U.S. was running out of because it was spending more paper money checks than it had gold to exchange for them. And President Roosevelt announced on the radio that he would break the country's promise to exchange dollars for gold.
It was then that I issued the proclamation providing for the National Bank holiday. And this was the first step in the government's reconstruction of our financial and economic fabric. The second step, last Thursday, was the legislation promptly and patriotically passed by the Congress, confirming my proclamation and broadening my powers so that it became possible, in view of the requirement of time, to extend the holiday and lift the ban of that holiday gradually in the days to come. This law also gave authority to develop a program for facilitation.
In both cases, breaking the link to gold allowed the U.S. to continue spending more than it earned, simply by printing more paper dollars. Since there was an increase in the number of dollars without an increase in the country's wealth, the value of each dollar fell. As these new dollars entered the market, without a corresponding increase in productivity, they went to buy lots of stocks, gold, and commodities, and hence caused their prices to rise. As I studied more history, I saw that the exact same thing happened many, many times before. I saw that since the beginning of time, when governments spent much more than they took in taxes, and conditions got bad, they ran out of money and they needed more. So they printed more, a lot more, which made its value fall and made the prices of most everything, including stocks, gold, and commodities, rise. That's when I first learned the principle that when central banks print a lot of money to relieve a crisis, buy stocks, gold, and commodities because their value will rise and the value of paper money will fall. This printing of money is also what happened in 2008 to relieve the mortgage-driven debt crisis, and in 2020 to relieve the pandemic-driven economic crisis, and it almost certainly will happen in the future. So I suggest that you keep this principle in mind. These experiences gave me another principle, which is to understand what is coming at you, you need to understand what happened before you. That principle led me to study how the Roaring '20s bubble turned into the 1930s depression, which gave me the lessons that allowed me to anticipate and profit from the 2007 bubble turning into the 2008 bust. All these experiences led me to develop an almost instinctual urge to look to the past for similar situations to learn how to handle the future well. Changing orders. Over the last few years, three big things that hadn't happened in my lifetime prompted me to do this study. First, countries didn't have enough money to pay their debts, even after lowering interest rates to zero, so their central banks began printing lots of money to do so. Second, big internal conflicts emerged due to growing gaps in wealth and values. This showed up in political populism and polarization between the left, who want to redistribute wealth, and the right, who want to defend those holding the wealth. And third, increasing external conflict between a rising great power and the leading great power, as is now happening with China and the United States. So I looked back. I saw that all these had happened together before, many times, and nearly always led to changing domestic and world orders. The last time this sequence happened was from 1930 to 1945. What exactly is an order, you might ask? It's a governing system for people dealing with each other. There are internal orders for governing within countries, typically laid out in constitutions. And there is a world order for governing between countries, typically laid out in treaties. Internal orders change at different times than world orders, though whether within or between countries, these orders typically change after wars. Civil wars within countries, international wars between countries. They happen when revolutionary new forces defeat weak old orders. For example, the U.S. internal order was laid out in the Constitution in 1789 after the American Revolution, and it is still operating today, even after the American Civil War. Russia got rid of its old order and established a new one with the Russian Revolution in 1917, which ended in 1991 with a relatively bloodless revolution. China began its current internal order in 1949 when the Chinese Communist Party won the Civil War. You get the idea. The current world order, commonly called the American World Order, formed after the Allied victory in World War II, when the U.S. emerged as the dominant world power. It was set out in agreements and treaties for how global governance and monetary systems work. In 1944, the New World Monetary System was laid out in the Bretton Woods Agreement and established the dollar as the world's leading reserve currency. A reserve currency is a currency that is commonly accepted around the world, and having one is a key factor in a country becoming the richest and most powerful empire. With a new dominant power and monetary system established, a new world order begins. These changes take place in a timeless and universal cycle that I call the Big Cycle. I'll start with a quick overview, then give you a more complete version, and then direct you to my book if you want more. As I studied the 10 most powerful empires over the last 500 years and the last 3 reserve currencies, it took me through the rise and decline of the Dutch Empire and the guilder, the British Empire and the pound, the rise and early decline in the United States Empire and the dollar, and the decline and rise of the Chinese Empire and its currencies, as well as the rise and decline of the Spanish, German, French, Indian, Japanese, Russian, and Ottoman empires, along with their significant conflicts, as measured in this chart. To understand China's patterns better, I also studied the rise and fall of Chinese dynasties and their monies back to the year 600. Because looking at all these measures at once can be confusing, I'll focus on the 4 most important ones: the Dutch, British, US, and Chinese. You'll quickly notice the pattern. Now let's simplify the form a bit. As you can see, they transpired in overlapping cycles that lasted about 250 years, with 10 to 20-year transition periods between them. Typically, these transitions have been periods of great conflict because leading powers don't decline without a fight. So how am I measuring an empire's power? In this study, I used 8 metrics. Each country's measure of total power is derived by averaging them together. They are education, inventiveness and technology development, competitiveness in global markets, economic output, share of world trade, military strength, the power of their financial center for capital markets, and the strength of their currency as a reserve currency. Because these powers are measurable, we can see how strong each country is now, was in the past, and whether they're rising or declining. By examining the sequences from many countries, we can see how a typical cycle transpires. And because the wiggles can be confusing, we can simplify it a bit to focus on the pattern of cause-effect relationships that drive the rise and decline of a typical empire. As you can see, better education typically leads to increased innovation and technology development, and with a lag, the establishment of the currency as a reserve currency. You can also see that these forces then declined in a similar order, reinforcing each other's decline. Let's now look at the typical sequence of events going on inside a country that produces these rises and declines. In a nutshell, the big cycle typically begins after a major conflict, often a war, establishes the new leading power and the new world order. Because no one wants to challenge this power, a period of peace and prosperity typically follows. As people get used to this peace and prosperity, they increasingly bet on it continuing. They borrow money to do that, which eventually leads to a financial bubble. The empire's share of trade grows, and when most transactions are conducted in its currency, it becomes a reserve currency, which leads to even more borrowing. At the same time, this increased prosperity distributes wealth unevenly, so the wealth gap typically grows between the rich haves and the poor have-nots. Eventually, the financial bubble bursts, which leads to the printing of money and increased internal conflict between the rich and the poor, which leads to some form of revolution to redistribute wealth. This can happen peacefully or as a civil war. While the empire struggles with this internal conflict, its power diminishes relative to external rival powers on the rise. When a new rising power gets strong enough to compete with the dominant power that is having domestic breakdowns, external conflicts, most typically wars, take place. Out of these internal and external wars come new winners and losers. Then the winners get together to create the new world order. And the cycle begins again. As I looked back, I saw that these cause and effect relationships drove the cycles of rises and declines all the way back to the Roman Empire. I saw how the stories of each one of these cycles blended together with others before, during, and after, in the same way as each individual story blends with others to make the epic 500-year story that is our collective history. And like human life cycles, no two are exactly the same, but most are similar. They're driven by logical cause and effect relationships that progress through stages from birth to strength and maturity to weakness and inevitably decline. However, that's like saying a person's life cycle takes 80 years on average, without recognizing that many are much shorter and many are longer. While age can be a good indicator of future longevity, a better way is to look at health indicators. One can do that with empires and their vital signs too. I found that by watching the indicators of power change, I was able to see what stage a country was in, which helped me to anticipate what was likely to come next. Now, I'll take you through the big cycle in more detail. Give me 20 minutes and I'll give you the last 500 years of history and show you the similar patterns across the Dutch, British, US, and Chinese empires. 500 years of big cycles. I'm going to describe the typical cycle by dividing it into 3 phases: the rise, the top, and the decline. The rise. Successful new orders that rise, both internal and external, are typically started by powerful revolutionary leaders doing 4 things. First, they win power by gaining more support than the opposition. Second, they consolidate power by converting, weakening, or eliminating the opposition so they don't stand in their way. Third, they establish systems and institutions that make the country work well. And fourth, they pick their successors well, or create systems that do that. Because a great empire requires many great leaders over several generations. At this stage, soon after winning the fight, there is typically a period of peace and growing prosperity because the leadership is clearly dominant and has broad support, so no one wants to fight it. During this phase, leaders within the country have to design an excellent system to raise the country's wealth and power. First and foremost, to be great, they must have strong education, which is not just teaching knowledge and skills, but also strong character, civility, and work ethic. These are typically taught in the family, schools, and religious institutions. That provides a healthy respect for rules and laws, order within society, low corruption, and enables them to unite behind a common purpose and work well together. As they do this, they increasingly shift from producing basic products to innovating and inventing new technologies. For example, the Dutch rose to defeat the Habsburg Empire and become superbly educated. They became so inventive that they came up with a quarter of all major inventions in the world, the most important of which was the invention of ships that could travel around the world to collect great riches, and the invention of capitalism, as we know it today, to finance those voyages. They, like all leading empires, enhanced their thinking by being open to the best thinking in the world. As a result, the people in the country become more productive and more competitive in world markets, which shows up in their growing economic output and rising share of world trade. You can see this happening now as the US and China are roughly comparable in both their economic outputs and their shares of world trade. As countries trade more globally, they must protect their trade routes and their foreign interests from attack So they develop great military strength. If done well, this virtuous cycle leads to strong income growth, which can be used to finance investments in education, infrastructure, and research and development. They must also develop systems to incentivize and empower those that have the ability to make or take wealth. In all of these cases, the most successful empires used a capitalist approach to develop productive entrepreneurs. Even China, which is run by the Chinese Communist Party, used a form of this capitalist approach. Deng Xiaoping, when asked about this, said, "It doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it catches mice. And it's glorious to be rich." To do this well, they must develop their capital markets. Most importantly, their lending, bond, and stock markets. That allows people to convert their savings into investments to fund invention and development and share in the successes of those who make great things happen. The Dutch created the first publicly listed company, the Dutch East India Company, and the first stock market to fund it, which were integral parts of the system that produced massive wealth and power. As a natural consequence, the greatest empires developed the world's leading financial centers for attracting and distributing the world's capital. Amsterdam was the world's financial center when the Dutch were preeminent. London, when the British were on top. New York is now, and China is quickly developing its financial centers. Most importantly, the capitalists, the governments, and the military must work together. Not only did the Dutch work well together, they were one and the same. The Dutch East India Company was granted a trade monopoly from the government and had its own officially sanctioned military to go out into the global markets to make and take wealth. The British followed with the British East India Company and had a similar coordination of their government, business, and military operations. The U.S. military-industrial complex followed suit, as does the Chinese system today. As the country becomes the largest international trading empire, its transactions can be paid with its currency, making it the preferred global medium of exchange. And because their currency is so widely accepted and frequently used, people around the world want to save in it, making it the preferred storehold of wealth, and thus the world's leading reserve currency. The guilder was the world's main reserve currency when the Dutch led world trade, the pound was when the British led, and the dollar has been since the US led. Naturally, China's currency is increasingly being used as a reserve currency. Having a reserve currency enables the empire to borrow more than other countries. That advantage is huge. Think about it. People all over the world are eager to save and hence lend back their currency to the empire. Countries without a reserve currency don't have that. And when the empire runs out of its own money, remember the United States in 1971? They can always print more. The exorbitant privilege afforded by the empire's reserve currency leads borrowing to increase and the beginning of a financial bubble. This series of cause and effect relationships leading to mutually supportive financial, political, and military powers, bolstered by the borrowing power of a reserve currency, have gone together since history began to be recorded. All the empires that became the most powerful in the world followed this path to the top. While in the top phase, most of these strengths are sustained, embedded within the fruits of their success are the seeds of their decline. As a rule, as people in these rich and powerful countries earn more, that makes them more expensive and less competitive relative to people in other countries who are willing to work for less. At the same time, people in other countries naturally copy the methods and technologies of the leading power, which further reduces the leading power's competitiveness. For example, British shipbuilders had less expensive workers than Dutch shipbuilders. So they hired Dutch designers to design better ships that were built by less expensive British workers, making them more competitive, which led the British to rise and the Dutch to decline. Also, as people become richer, they tend not to work as hard. They enjoy more leisure, pursue the finer and less productive things in life, and at the
Maybe he meant on average.
Isn't he? It's like he's describing what's going on, right? With
So beautifully. This is what school should have been for me, but I mean, maybe it was. To be honest, I just was smoking, doing whatever.
Right, but
this is great. Like I don't even think I haven't even looked at the chat very much because I'm like, this feels like high school college that I missed. All this stuff is new to me. I mean, you know, I kind of know it, but like it's nice to hear it in a very calm, detailed, not stupid manner. Like he's just telling you how it went rather than telling you all the baloney in between that everyone else likes to talk about, which I hate talking about the baloney in between.
Correct. I watched this video and I don't watch a lot of videos. Well, I listened to it while I was doing some work. And I was like, oh, we should share this because he's doing a great job of articulating what is going on in history, and people can draw their own conclusion. Like I saw in the chat, oh, they're talking about China. I saw China come up multiple times here. And it's like, yeah, like you can understand exactly what's happening right now. China like does contracts with companies in the US to design shit for China, just literally what he's just talking about. So that then China has a better design and they have cheaper labor to do things. It's fascinating. There's some more good points as
it's all like makes sense. Like, and most people would know it, but you don't get it in this kind of like really awesome, detailed, calm manner. It's like years of like compiled like visual information. Like you see like, oh, there's guys at Home Depot, they work for less than the guys at, you know what I mean? Like you see all this stuff, but like to have it makes so much more sense when somebody with some established credibility, just as a minimum, like says it in a calm way. And that's the way that I like the information to come across. A lot of like Richard's old work, a lot of like you know, what Jack brings to the table when he talks about some concepts, like just really talking really just about what's going on rather than everything else is not important, because this is just the truth. I love the wealth gap thing. It's like, I know we're stuck right in that thing right now where it's like the guys in crypto, like some of them just get too hella rich, and it's like, so it is an interesting kind of like, oof.
And the currency stuff too, right? Very interesting. He's talking about the currency, and as you become better at producing things, then you start accepting payments in your currency, and the more and more your currency is used, and then eventually you have a reserve currency. And what we've literally been watching this play out over the last like decade, you know?
No, for sure. Yeah, it's been really, really, really. That's why I had to be a part of it. I'm like, I'm 28 years old. Like, financial revolution's happening. Like, I'm not gonna go do whatever. Like, I would rather do this and just see what happens. And then, you know, whatever. Please take all my money, shoot me in the face, break my door down, whatever. Like, shit happens. But you don't usually get to be involved in such a killer time. Ray was saying that in the beginning. He's like, it was boring. It was boring when I started, and then this whole devaluation happened. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of what's happening to me. Except he was actually in the stock exchange, like watching it, which is pretty crazy to think like guys like us would be on the ground just with a piece of paper. I would be good at that. I mean, I'm not saying I'd be the best at it in the world. No, but like, I think I would be good at that. It's stress. I can only imagine the stress level, nuclear. All your boys are there. You're writing down numbers all day on a piece of paper, and you're probably using amphetamines. So I can only imagine, but man, it's crazy. I can only imagine to be there. I want to look into that more in my own time, see how that kind of went, like what kind of guys were doing all that stuff. I'm sure that was wild. inspired a lot of people too. All right, let's get back into it, guys. There is 16 minutes left. We'll let it play and we'll talk. And if there's anything good, biceps in the chat. Make sure you're smashing that like, guys. You know I don't tell you to smash the like enough. You know that's part of the deal here. You smash that like. Go to my Twitter. I have a post there where I mentioned if you'd like us to talk about anything this week, please let us know. And there's a nice post where you can, I said, if you want any guests, we're having KG on the 27th and citmcast.com, guys. Click on that link. Go to the Crypto in the Morning YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button for me. Smash the like over there too. We're transitioning over there once we get to 1,000 to make this more legit. All right, so let's get it. And I'm getting studio money. I got a little studio account now, and it's buffing up, and I'm ready to make a move. If it gets 35 degrees, I'm out. So God, you do that. Whenever it gets that cold, I'm out. I'm going south. So guys, I had some real estate agents hit me up yesterday after the show, Sam. Interestingly enough, when I was like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a place down. And I had like 2 or 3 hit me up. I was like, wow, this would be easier than I maybe imagined.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah.
The show's awesome for that, too. Like, if you have something going on. But anyway, guys, smash the likes. Sorry for shilling since I'm stealing everyone's money over here. Let's get it.
Dream become decadent. Values change from generation to generation during the rise to the top. From those who had to fight to achieve wealth and power, to those who inherited it. They're less battle-hardened, steeped in luxuries, and accustomed to the easy life, which makes them more vulnerable to challenges. The golden era of the Dutch Empire and the Victorian era of the British Empire were such high prosperity periods like this. As people get used to doing well, they increasingly bet on the good times continuing and borrow money to do that, which grows into financial bubbles. Naturally, the financial gains come unevenly, so the wealth gap grows. Wealth gaps are self-reinforcing because rich people use their greater resources to reinforce their powers. For example, they give greater privileges to their children, like better education, and they influence the political system to their advantage. This causes the gaps in values, politics, and opportunities to grow between the rich haves and the poor have-nots. Those who are less well off feel the system is unfair, so resentments grow. But as long as the living standards of most people are still rising, these gaps and resentments don't boil over into conflict. Having the world's reserve currency inevitably leads to borrowing excessively and contributes to the country building up large debts with foreign lenders. While this boosts...
So it happens as by definition, more so than by like, I mean, we think peoples are evil, but really peoples are all just the same for the most part.
It appears that way. There's a framework, right, that he's laying out here, and
Yeah, it's interesting.
this thing just this is the framework.
It kind of blows right through all that nonsense, like liberal, Republican, right, left. It just like blows right through all that crap. It's like y'all are just playing with your dorks. Like this
Get people
happens
distracted from reality
all the time. This is what happens. And if you step up and pay attention, this is when you can make your life-changing wealth. And it doesn't really have to impact people that negatively either. Like you're not scamming people like the guys that were writing those real estate checks were in 2007. Like when just like, oh, you have $6,000 in your debit account. All right, you got a $500,000 house. You're good. Like it's like that's all they did. And then those guys got super wealthy. And then they all cried like little girls when they didn't. Oh, we can't do it. Oh, wait, they're gonna press charges. Yeah, motherfucker. Because you were literally scamming people. And it just happens over and over. But the cool thing about crypto is I can provide liquidity with assets that I like that are DeFi. I can also take out loans I'm not saying I'm done that. I've never done that, but I mean, I assume in a year that won't be too tricky. But I ain't playing with it yet. I need a milli liquid first. So let's get back to the video. I love how he cuts through it all. It's like, yeah, oh no, this happens all the time. If you're the richest country, everyone's just going to over leverage it. I'm like,
Everybody. Yep.
yeah,
And it's happened
like,
over and over and over.
Of course, humans are all the same. Not all the, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, yeah, of course, everyone has differences. Some people would fight and some people would run and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, 90% of humans will conform, and generally they will accept lending offers, basically, like over leveraged lending offers if they work in that field, I guess. So it's pretty wild to think about, really. Like, oh, it's just human beings, man.
Spending power over the short term, it weakens the country's financial health and weakens the currency over the long term. In other words, when borrowing and spending are strong, the empire appears very strong, but its finances are in fact being weakened. The borrowing sustains the country's power beyond its fundamentals by financing both domestic overconsumption and international military conflicts required to maintain the empire. Inevitably, the cost of maintaining and defending the empire becomes greater than the revenue it brings in, so having an empire becomes unprofitable. For example, the Dutch Empire overextended around the world and fought war after increasingly expensive war with the British and other European powers to protect its territory and trade routes. The British Empire similarly became massive, bureaucratic, and lost its competitive advantages as rival powers, particularly Germany, soared, leading to an increasingly expensive arms race and world war. The U.S. has spent about $8 trillion on foreign wars and their consequences since September 11, and trillions more for other military operations and for supporting military bases in 70 countries. And it still isn't spending enough to support its military competition with China in the area around China. In this cycle, the richer countries eventually get deeper into debt by borrowing from poorer countries that save more. It's one of the early signs of a wealth and power shift. This started in the United States in the 1980s when it had a per capita income 40 times that of China's and started borrowing from Chinese who wanted to save in dollars because the dollar was the world's reserve currency. Similarly, the British borrowed a lot of money from its much poorer colonies, and the Dutch did the same at their time. If the empire begins to run out of new lenders, those holding their currency begin to look to sell and get out rather than to buy, save, lend, and get in. And the strength of the empire begins to decline. The decline. The decline comes from internal economic weakness together with internal fighting or costly external fighting or both. Typically, the decline comes gradually and then very suddenly. When debts become very large and there is an economic downturn and the empire can no longer borrow the money necessary to repay its debts, the financial bubble bursts. This creates great domestic hardships and forces the country to choose between defaulting on its debts or printing a lot of new money. It always chooses to print a lot of new money, at first gradually and eventually massively. That devalues the currency and raises inflation. For the Dutch, this was the financial crisis brought about by financial excesses and paying for the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Similarly, for the British, it was paying for its financial excesses and its debts from the two world wars. And for the U.S., it's been 3 cycles of debt finance booms and busts since the 90s, with the central bank stepping in each time with stronger measures. When the government has problems funding itself, when there are bad economic conditions, and living standards for most people are declining, And there are large wealth, values, and political gaps. Internal conflict between the rich and the poor, as well as different ethnic, religious, and racial groups, greatly increases. This leads to political extremism that shows up as populism of the left or the right. Those of the left seek to redistribute the wealth, while those of the right seek to maintain the wealth in the hands of the rich. Typically, during such times, taxes on the rich rise, and when the rich fear their wealth and well-being will be taken away, they move to places, assets, and currencies they feel safer in. These outflows reduce the empire's tax revenue, which leads to a classic, self-reinforcing, hollowing out process. When the flight of wealth gets bad enough, governments outlaw it. Those seeking to get out begin to panic. These turbulent conditions undermine productivity, which shrinks the economic pie and causes more conflict about how to divide the shrinking resources. Populist leaders emerge from both sides and pledge to take control and bring about order. That's when democracy is most challenged because it fails to control the anarchy, and it is when the move to a strong populist leader who will bring order to the chaos is most likely. As conflict within the country escalates, it leads to some form of revolution or civil war to redistribute wealth and force the necessary big changes. This can be peaceful and maintain the existing order, but it's more often violent and changes the order. For example, the Roosevelt Revolution to redistribute wealth was relatively peaceful and maintained the existing internal order, while the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Chinese Revolution were much more violent and led to new internal orders. This internal conflict makes the empire weak and vulnerable to rising external rivals who, seeing this domestic weakness, are more inclined to mount a challenge. This raises the risk of great international conflict, especially if the rival has built up a comparable military. Defending oneself and one's empire against rivals requires great military spending, which has to occur as domestic economic conditions are deteriorating and the empire can least afford it. Since there is no viable system for peacefully adjudicating international disputes, these conflicts are typically resolved through tests of power. As bolder challenges are made, the leading empire is faced with the difficult choice of fighting or retreating. Fighting and losing is the worst outcome, but retreating is bad too, as it cedes progress to the rival and signals that the empire is weak to those countries that are considering which side to be on. Poor economic conditions cause more fighting for wealth and power, which inevitably leads to some kind of war. Wars are terribly costly. At the same time, they produce the tectonic shifts that realign the new orders to the new realities of wealth and power in the world. When those holding the reserve currency and debt of the declining empire lose faith and sell them, that marks the end of its big cycle. Of the roughly 750 currencies that existed since 1700, less than 20% now exist, and all of them have been devalued. For the Dutch, this happened after their defeat in the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War, when they weren't able to repay the massive debts they built up during it. This led to a run on the Bank of Amsterdam and a desperate sell-off, forcing massive money printing, which devalued the currency and the empire into irrelevance. For the British, this happened after World War II, when despite their victory, they could not repay the massive debts they borrowed to fund their war effort. This led to a series of money printing, devaluations, and sell-offs in the British pound as the US and the dollar emerged dominant and created a new world order. At the time of this recording, the United States hasn't yet reached this point. While it has massive debt, spends more than it earns, and funds this deficit with more borrowing and printing huge amounts of new money, the big sell-off in dollars and dollar debt hasn't yet begun. And while there are great internal and external conflicts occurring for all the classic reasons, they've not yet crossed the line to become wars. Eventually, out of these conflicts, whether they're violent or not, come new winners who get together and restructure the losers' debts and political systems and establish the new world order. Then the old side.
This will be the last pause, and then we'll finish watching this. I don't know if anybody's paying attention. Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia just asked to join the group to create a new currency, the new world order. Put that into perspective with what Ray Dalio is talking about in this video. The decline is not too far away. It's going to happen in our lifetime. But that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, let's finish this up.
Yeah, we'll finish it out, guys. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and I might come on again and cover some stuff, but we're just going to let this play out and then get off. So we'll talk to you, and I'll do a closing. Make sure you smash the like if you're in here, guys. This has been good for me. I've been enjoying it. So good. All righty.
Cycle, an empire ends, and the new one begins, and they do it all over again. That's a lot of detail I just threw at you to paint a picture of how the typical big cycle transpires. Of course, not all of them transpire in exactly this way, but most largely do. So much so that it seems like the stories of rises and declines stay essentially the same, and the only things that change are the clothes the characters wear and the technologies they use. So, where are we heading? The future. Most empires have their time in the sun and inevitably decline. Reversing a decline is difficult because that requires undoing a lot that's already been done, but it's possible. By looking at these indicators, it's pretty easy to see which stage of the big cycle an empire is in, how fit it is, and whether its condition is improving or worsening, which can help one estimate how many years it has left. Still, these estimates aren't precise, and the cycle can be extended if those in charge pay attention to their vital signs and improve them. For example, knowing that a person is 60 years old, how fit they are, whether they smoke or not, and a few other basic vital signs, one can estimate the person's longevity. One can do that with empires and their vital signs too. It won't be precise, but it will be broadly indicative and give clear direction on steps to take to increase longevity. It's most often the case that a nation's greatest war is with itself over whether or not it can make the hard decisions needed to sustain success. As for what we need to do, it comes down to just two things: earn more than we spend and treat each other well. All other things I mentioned, strong education, inventiveness, being competitive, and all the rest, are just ways of getting at these two things. It's easy to measure if we're doing them. So like people who want to get fit, let's get on the program and improve our vitals. Let's do that individually and collectively. My goal for sharing this picture of how the world works and a few principles for dealing with it well is to help you recognize where we are and the challenges we face, and to make the wise decisions needed to navigate these times well. Since there is a lot more to discuss and we are out of time, you can learn more in my book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World.
That's a good book, guys.
If you want that book, check that book out. You know, bullish is, God, these guys are getting to me because I want to play the Twitter space. Sam, I know you got to jump off. So Sam, great to see you. I'm going to let the Twitter space run because people are hyped up about it. And now I'm starting to think, well, So
with Jack and
yeah, he's doing something in there
cool.
with a BitTorrent.
Cool. Pull it up. I'm gonna get down, but I will stay tuned.
Jump back on if you have
stay
anything
tuned
to
down.
say. If you have anything to say, jump back on, and I'm gonna be on the lookout, see if there's anything going on. So just I'm gonna give it 20, 30, and just see what's going on, guys. Smash the like. Sam, I'll talk to you soon if you're not back.
Yep. Enjoy. I'm glad you liked that video. Hope everybody else did. I'll talk to you guys. Peace.
Peace. All right, guys. So let's pull up this Twitter space real quick.
Then you have a batch of something that will be tradable. So on this key, I don't know, Jack, are you showing something on your screen right now?
Yeah, I'm showing the series of of Zen
exactly.
NFTs.
So there you can see that yeah.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that each Zen NFT is like a certificate of the future mint that you can actually trade right away. So one of the strategies to mint an NFT like this could be something like that. So it's a Saturday or it's a Sunday and the gas prices are all-time low. So what you do is you engage with the protocol. You get your NFT with, let's say, 100 VMUs or 128 VMUs. And then when the gas price spikes, let's say 5 times, maybe 10 times on Wednesday, you can actually trade your NFT on OpenSea, and we're going to be listing on OpenSea. And you can trade it because the gas price will dictate how expensive it is to mint NFTs and to mint Zen in the future. So that could present a very interesting arbitrage opportunity between low gas prices and high gas prices between on the networks between days. So originally, when you mint Zen, you have to wait. You have to wait all the way to the end to receive your Zen. Now, when you mint Zen with an NFT, you capture the value of the future mint right away, and you can trade it. So you can buy one, you can sell one, you can make your own and then sell it. So it's completely driven by the first principles. You make your own NFT and you trade it if you want. So generally, the NFT projects have airdrops. We do not have airdrops. We follow first principles, just like with Zen, where you mint your own Zen. You can mint your own NFT, and the NFT will have all of the economic energy that Zen presents behind it, and linked to how much gas you
have. To make an NFT, we're basically making the claim portable, so we can expose Zen to other marketplaces by doing so. And NFTs on OpenSea is a very big market, so that's one thing to point out. Another thing to point out, it sort of creates this equalizer between normies and techies. People do use bots today. It can't be stopped. It's permissionless protocol. But we rather have people use an audited batch, multi-minter, which we call Zen torrent, than something that might be scammed. So we're also making that possibility available for everyone by doing so. So how can you tell a little bit, Jack, about, I think you explained it better, how this contract setup will work, and also the fact that this is something that we of course go into audit. So what is the expected time rollout of this product?
Yeah, so just like with everything, we're going to be requesting an audit for all of the code. The code will land into our public GitHub sometime, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. We will be launching on testnet so that people can try NFT minting with the money that doesn't cost them anything. So testnet obviously has test money or test Ethereum. And the audit should probably be done within a couple of weeks, at which point we're going to launch, similarly to how we launched Zen before. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that because the NFTs have properties, they have series. So they're going to start with initial series starting with number 1. So number 1 through number 10,000 will be special rare NFTs that the protocol will not make anymore. So they're going to have special color pattern. Those NFTs probably will be more expensive, just because the system, the contract will not make similar colors again. So they're going to be of the rare series, I would say. Now, the mechanics of redeeming NFT is similar to coming back in and claiming your Zen. That's exactly what you will have to do. You will come to the web app, and then you will have your NFT inside your wallet. The web app will scan your wallet for an NFT, and then convert an NFT, or rather redeem the NFT for Zen Mint. And obviously, all of the limitations apply. Specifically, you have to come back on time. Otherwise, you will not be able to mint Zen. You will have penalties. Once you redeem your NFT, it will receive a redeemed stamp, very similar to a stamp you get on a letter when you mail it. And you can still keep your NFT. It's just not going to be redeemable, and you can keep it for vanity's sake, or just as a collectible, because previously with Zen protocol itself, when you get your C rank, you have to give it up when you are redeeming your C rank for Zen Mint. With an NFT, you get to keep your NFT and keep your C rank, so that you can show off to your friends how early you were. So that's kind of interesting too. And obviously, a good point on OpenSea. OpenSea is a huge marketplace. We think it will allow more exposure to the Zen protocol. It will give it more game mechanics, and it will bring in more users that are NFT savvy and are interested in NFT space.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to, like, the crypto and the NFT worlds are very, very siloed. So in our pursuit to open up the communities, this is a very interesting step to break down those barriers, for sure. But as you point out, it's important to realize the mechanics of this. It's the same fundamental things that are happening, right? Instead of you claiming one C rank, and then while doing so, you choose your mint term, and then you come back at T. This is sort of an amplification of that process. So that's still the overall thing that's happening here. It's just that you can choose to automate this process with amplification a little bit, right? So it's still going to be on Zen.network. Do you wanna mention a little bit about that? That you still go as you would claim a C rank, but then you instead can choose this issuance of Zen torrent, which will then end up in your wallet. And since you choose the T there, you still need to come back to the protocol at tea time, as I like to say, at the mint term, and claim your mint. Right.
Yeah. So you go to the same web app, and you're just gonna have to specify create Zen torrent or Zen torrent NFT, and then you will be given the choice how many VMUs or parallel minters you want to launch. So VMU, again, is the virtual minting unit, which is equivalent of the number of wallets you would otherwise use if you do it manually. Now, there was a lot of questions about bots and people building bots to automate Zen minting process. So this is our answer to the bot question. Bots in themselves are not bad, because everybody pay gas and everybody have to wait to receive their Zen. However, this project, Zen torrent, further equalizes the playing field and makes it even more fair for everybody to get into Zen, and then specify as many Ethereum they want for gas, and they wouldn't need to
Yeah, I F that up. You're right.
And also manage the wallets.
I should start another video.
People use multiple wallets. So again, the contract.
Guys, I'm going to jump off here. Bullish is going to be mad at me. I should have started another video. Damn it. But I will. I'm going to start one in 3 minutes. I'm going to be back on. So if you could miss 3 minutes of that, I can rewind. I will talk to you in 3 minutes, guys. Hit the like before you go out. Have a great day. I'll see you in a minute.